Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on the stage my guest Rafał Mikusiński. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. To add something, yet another boost, your coffee. I don't want to tell it's going to be a shock, it's going to be a boost. So a few words from the supervisory authority and some questions that I got before this conversation. Dear Chairman, before we start, I will start with the most general question. It will be quite broad, but I want to give you the opportunity to present your perspective on the reality. So, quo vadis, what's next from your perspective? What's the most important challenge and what's the most important path ahead of the funds? A quite broad question is that I've been prepared and we've been prepared for this question thanks to yesterday's debates. I would like to, I hope that the future will be not full of irregularities, but there are some challenges for sure. The first one is demographics, as Professor Kotecki mentioned. Then we had a speech by our colleague from ESMA. The first topic, demographics. Yesterday, we touched upon demographics as a negative factor for the structure of funds. A lot of funds investing heavily in treasury bonds. That results from the preference of the customer, from the aversion to risk, low risk appetite, and return on investment. So if we don't deliver good products in terms of products with a high return rate, we will not win our clients and customers. Our customers are getting older and older. The supervisory body should be old and experienced, but for business, we need young blood and young spirit and new generation who is not interested in such complex things like the capital market. So we should look for the opportunity for the future. There's less people and it's more difficult to attract their attention, but not to make this introduction too lengthy, the regulatory part. It also regards capitals market union and different strategies with regard to customer care and legislative approach to customer care. Customer who doesn't want to take the responsibility on their shoulders. Now it regards the banking sector, but shortly it will regard other financial sectors. So on the other hand, it's like with ESG. This is that's true that it's in good faith, but the abundance on regulations make the situation more difficult and it hampers the development of our businesses. And this legislative flood is very difficult to tackle. So I'd like to draw your attention that as long as Europe needs to find a solution because it stops being a competitive market on the global capital market and on the markets of financial instruments, we need to find our place on the EU market, because all these initiatives cause that smaller markets will not find it easy to go on. You will deliver a high return on investment, no matter what will be the effort put by your people. If there are no good companies and high quality businesses on the market, no return will be generated. You know that to be a public company now, it's a great challenge. A listed company, it's a great challenge and quite dangerous, acquiring capital. So it is in our shared interest, in our common interest. So to have it. So, dear Chairman, as you've been talking about the adaptation to the changing structure and about the new demographics, and going and reaching to customers, because the economy doesn't grow as it should. So if you were to describe, according to you, from the perspective of investors, the most important topics that could be done by the funds in order to win new customers and to adapt to the demographic challenge, it's a very good question, because first and foremost, with regard to what was said before, you need to find a way to young people and to win their interest. Maybe not to explain, because that might be difficult, but to win their interest and to draw their attraction to such elements of the capital market that will be of their interest, simply. So let's try to avoid such a path for young people where their first investment experience starts and ends with cryptocurrencies, because that might be painful. There are a lot of clients on the market, customers on the market, and it's we have it in our nature that when we talk about investing, first and foremost we think about real estate. In the previous years, we wanted to introduce rates in Poland, but the product offer doesn't need to be adapted to the customer's profile, because that's difficult, but it should be comprehensible and motivating. But that requires good investment performance, and it's not only about increasing the benchmark or beating the benchmark, because for the customers a loss of 15% versus benchmark, which is minus 16%, it's no win for our customers. Of course, the variable fee can be imposed but for the customer the situation is very difficult, and to me the sector should address the issue in the media, not to leave the customers with the feeling that they were cheated or misled. And another important thing that we're trying to cope with, this is manipulation, abuse of private data and confidential data that discourages customers, especially if it happens in the environment of professional advisors, if these are financial institutions employees who commit such offenses.
If you were to point things that worry you in the investment market, clouds on the horizon, I mean. So let's try and find 3 or 4 such points that are worrying and that leaders of funds should keep in mind. Well, an investment fund is one of many investment products, financial products. One of many products altogether that people can decide to buy, to devote their money to, their savings or their excess money. The issue is that the Polish economy is developing very well in spite of all kinds of difficulties and in spite of politics. And our wealth is growing. The wealth of the society is growing. The middle class is growing. Among others, through all kinds of social programs that support these financial possibilities in our society. But what's not following is growth in funds, investment funds or assets, their development. The investment structure in the customers is rather conservative. So mainly it's debt instruments. We've talked to colleagues, and it seems a bit strange to me that Treasury bonds offer is not as popular, although it's quite good, and it's even competitive to your funds. These are rather attractive products. So that's point number one. We're dealing with some kind of stagnation, or even going backwards in terms of the side of the economy. A solution might be more openness, or more openness to overseas investments. That's number one. The second issue I'm concerned with is the amount of regulation that you have to deal with. I'm not concerned about your financial results, but I am if we look at how much attention has to be paid to satisfying regulatory requirements. This requires so much attention that sometimes you lack time for doing a business. So there's also all kinds of corporate reporting requirements, and I think this is quite a challenge for the industry, and maybe it's might be an issue, a real issue for some, because the regulation is simply too much, and business may be too little for it to be profitable in the context of all the regulation. If I may pick up on this thread and ask you two things, are you also worried about this pro-consumer trend in regulations and in court rulings in Europe compared to other markets? And this these excess requirements may lead to some consolidation, turmoil and consolidation. Well, I think that all these regulatory requirements created in Brussels with good intentions usually mean that at one point consolidation has to take place, because you need a certain size of business to be able to afford meeting these requirements, or be a very niche manager. But like you said, quite to the point, it's something Mr. Jastrzębski talks about, and I don't want to replace him, but looking at pro-consumerist approach and treating your customers as consumers is very problematic, because consumers want to participate in the profits but don't want to carry the burden of the risk, and that's a problem. It's something you have to bear in mind when designing products. You think, well, if it can be addressed in products, I think it's worth thinking about. Yet, as of now, at the supervisor's office, financial supervisor's office, we lack a good idea about how to address this. I have no good idea, really, how to defend against this. If there was no Swiss franc situation, we wouldn't have the conditions that we have now. Everybody would be in their Swiss franc loans, and everything would be all right. How would you assess the entire practice of working with the market, with funds, from the point of view of the supervisor? What could be better in this collaboration, this partnership? Or what could be worse? Or where have you seen a significant improvement? Well, this is the first time I've been at this conference, and maybe that's even for the better, because I'd like to say that our work with the chamber and with the industry is improving. We see constructive approach, and I must tell you that in some cases our opinions are really coherent, aligned, yours and ours? You ask me what else can be done, and I am forced to say that always there are those that are not going with the market, and the majority of companies are working as they should be, but those few black sheep mean that the reception of the industry is worse, and we need to address those irregularities with our regulatory ideas, and these regulations then impact the operation of those that work in a regular way. And it's not about regulating for the sake of regulating, because let me praise ourselves and you. These initiatives of good practices, the self-regulation ideas born in the capital market, have been faster, a step ahead of insurance market, banking market. Your industry has prepared good practices, and I'm really proud of this. I'm happy that we dealt with these issues before your other participants. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for that cooperation.
That is auto-regulation, self-regulation. It's checked, it's good with that, and now the enforcement of self-regulation. So the painful environment very often. One of the chairmen said yesterday that he wished the KNF would be fast in its action. I would have the same. Unfortunately, I'm not the lawyer. And if you take a look at the Code of Administrative Procedure, you know that sometimes our hands are tied, and the party, namely the company which committed some infringement, they do everything in order to make this procedure as long as possible, and we need to prove before the common court that the infringement or the offense is should be also prosecuted, because for the judiciary it's very often so that if nobody loses anything and somebody earned less than they could, or somebody earned more than they should, it's okay, because it's not any offense, and the detriment to the parties is minor. Now we have a real storm in the internet about a few companies, and at the end of the day, if you don't know, there are some cases being investigated by the public prosecution and they are heard before the court. So, dear Chairman, while listening to you, but also while listening to everything that was said over last days, I'm under the impression, and please confirm whether it's right, there is a communication, a message that, okay, you did a lot in terms of self-regulation, you can see commitment and engagement, but on the strategic level, it is so that we are in the reality where we tell to ourselves, so far, so good, so the situation is quite stable, and at the same time, we have this great ship of changes, and we are losing our distance. Maybe it is not so that something bad is happening, but maybe there is a chance, a potential that remains untapped, because it's not possible to catch customers with appetite for investment. So this increase is not used, and we might wake up the moment when the ship is gone. Maybe these people will invest out of Poland. For sure, all these initiatives will make the access to all possibilities broader, and that would be the best to have it for no compensation with the guarantee of full return. But indeed, for your sector, this high inflation high inflationary environment, it's quite it makes that products are competitive because customers have negative interest, and we have return on deposits and quite high interest rates, which affect the standing of the companies. It's not so easy. High interest rates and deposits, term deposits, will not last forever, and maybe that's going to be a good moment to draw the attention of the environment, of the society, because the society has a lot of money in order to attract them to some products, but these products need to be attractive. They don't need to be understandable, because we know that the level of financial education is not very high. Of course, this feeling that you need to save some money for your old age retirement, especially is taking into account the replacement rate. This is your task to spread the message, because your publications are monitored and watched and read more frequently than ours. Nobody reads the KNF website. Starting from this development of business. So what about customers who are not yet customers of funds? Maybe some revolution in thinking should take place. How to increase and expand the relationship with such customers? If there would be one takeaway message for our audience, I think that should be this shock and this method of building relationship with our customers. As you said, we may tell that the revolution in relationship management is needed, but we need to win new customers. We cannot limit ourselves to the people with very conservative investment preference, because they will opt for bonds, and if the economy is to grow and you need an incentive and impulse, you need money from the younger generation who has a totally different perception of reality, or from people who have never been customers before. Mikusiński, Deputy Chairman of the KNF, thank you very much for this conversation. Thank you.